This video is brought to you by NordVPN. Hello everybody and welcome to a very informal, low-key video where I'm going to be going through some of your questions and theories in relation to Spider-Man No Way Home. Leave a like if you could, that would be great. This was taken from my trailer breakdown video from a few days back. That's still up if you are interested, presumably at time of recording this at the very least. But yeah, let's just get into it. So this first one's from Ledane, who says, I think you're missing the possibility that these villains are from universes where they actually won. Not necessarily that they were taken from the same universe as the movies we've seen. So yeah, I actually saw this a couple of times. But yes, because of the multiverse, there are multiple, in fact, probably infinite numbers of everybody. But if that is the case, that they've taken these villains from other universes separate from the Raimi movies, for me, it's kind of like, what's the point of that? That's not as interesting. I don't want to visit a universe that's adjacent to the Raimi films. You know, I want to see that universe in particular. But yes, that is definitely a possibility. Okay, this one's from Jess Kroll, who says, question for Mr. Sunday. That's me. Do you think Donald Glover's Prowler will have any payoff in this movie? Also, that feast is seen where Miles Morales volunteers. Yes, that is true. Good eye. That is something that I missed in my trailer breakdown. But yeah, you do see the sign for feast. Now, there's been a couple of nods towards Miles Morales, the other one that you mentioned, with Donald Glover's character being his uncle. But I don't think this is going to be heavy on Miles Morales. I think probably the next movie, or maybe even the movie after that, is when they're going to go into that area. I think it's going to be when Peter Parker's getting a bit older, and Tom Holland, of course, in turn is also. So at this point, I think they'll just be sowing the seeds. I mean, also, you know, we could get a post-credits with him or whatever, but I'd imagine also that role is almost certainly not cast at this point, especially because you have to cast somebody so young. But no, sorry, your question was about the Prowler. We're going to see Donald Glover. Maybe, if at all, very little, just hinting at something bigger. It's from Casper, who says, the Venom lizard thing could also be Scorpion. He's got something going on with Vulture. Yeah, I think that's, you know, fair enough. It could very well be the Scorpion. Scorpion, or the guy who becomes a Scorpion, is in this universe already. I just don't think the silhouette of that fits that character. But look, there's enough villains in this movie where, sure, throw him in. Why not? Why not? From Coyote, who says, don't mean to be that guy. Well, actually I do. But you do know that there is still literally zero confirmation that Toby and Andrew will be in this. I'm not saying there definitely won't be, but we may be setting ourselves up for a big disappointment. And this is true. There has been no official word that they are going to be showing up. But there's been enough rumblings from people, you know, in the know, and some actors have also let it slip. Most recently, JB Smoove said, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Tobey Maguire return. So yeah, nothing official, but I would be shocked and appalled if they were not in the movie at all. It's from Blake, who says, when Doc Ock says hello to Peter, I assume he's saying it to Toby, not Tom. Yeah, maybe. Because often with these trailers, you know, they'll cut it in a way that it looks like one character is talking to a character who's not even in that scene at all, or they can also CGI remove characters entirely or put new people in to avoid spoilers. So yes, that's very possible. Axolotl says, I'm calling it. Doctor Strange is Mephisto in disguise. I am not even joking. I've seen this a few times as well, floating around the internet, that everybody's gone Mephisto crazy ever since WandaVision. But yeah, if it was Mephisto, that ties into what happened in the comics, where Mephisto was the one who made it so that Peter Parker's identity is unknown yet again. And it is kind of an odd thing for Doctor Strange to do, to agree to do this seemingly world-altering spell. But no, I don't think it is. But, you know, like all of these theories, why not? Wouldn't that be something else? Lolboy says, the clothes that Peter Holland is wearing is the same as the clothes Peter Maguire wore during the Spider-Man 2 suit-up scene. Search Spider-Man 2 suit-up scene, and it matches perfectly. Yeah, I think that's probably just a nice homage, if anything else. Or it could be a coincidence. But yes, that seems accurate. Robert Harris says, I noticed that when Lizard, maybe, attacks Peter, it looks like he's trapped in some sort of cell. Perhaps Doctor Strange has already sent him back to his original universe. Yes! So I wonder if this is kind of a weird Doctor Strange kind of prison situation. Because when he does attack, you see that force field kind of go up. Maybe he is housing a bunch of multi-dimensional villains of sort. So yeah, I think you absolutely might be onto something there, Robert Harris. Random Enemy 47 says, what do you think the chances are that this is a two-parter with Doctor Strange 2 that ends with a cliffhanger Infinity War style? I think it will end with a slight, probably actually pretty significant cliffhanger, but that part will most likely be more in relation to Doctor Strange himself. I think they are going to wrap up, for the most part, the Spider-Man side of this story, but then obviously open things up for Doctor Strange, who it turns out is apparently going to be in this movie quite a lot. But no, I think you also might be onto something there, especially with Sam Raimi directing Doctor Strange 2 and all the different dimensions they're probably going to visit in that. It makes sense that these two movies would be heavily linked, along with WandaVision and probably Loki, and I guess the MCU in general, I guess. Cypher Null says, I can't wait for Holland's and Garfield's Spider-Man reactions to Maguire having organic web shooters. I've heard there is a scene in the movie where they talk about that. LMAO. Yeah, it's always been weird and gross, the idea of that. To me, at the time when it came out, it seemed like the most realistic because, like, I hear this is realistic anyway. But yeah, a teenager being able to build something like this, is fairly impractical. That's also something that Tom Holland said he didn't like about the Andrew Garfield web shooters that he liked about his version that you see at the beginning of Civil War. They're kind of quite chunky and clunky because, he's a teenager. But yeah, that would be great if there was a little acknowledgement of that. And funnily enough, initially they did use the mechanical web shooters in the Raimi films. In the scene where he's testing it out in his room, they actually CGI'd them off his wrist. So that was like a later decision that they did make. It's from Ian, who says, something I've been wondering and I don't remember seeing anyone else mention, but is Doc Ock even a villain? I know the marketing seems to be hinting at a Sinister Six type scenario, and the trailer introduces him in the same sequence as Dafoe's Goblins, Pumpkin Bomb, and Electro. But if what Alfred Molina was told is true, and it is Ock as plucked from the water, then he's redeemed Ock, right? Well, yeah, because, the way that these trailers are cut, it might be hiding that exact scenario. But it also might be a situation where, he doesn't have the inhibitor chip anymore and the arms have taken over. Or maybe because he's in another dimension, he's looking to escape or whatever. And so, him and his arms, they're on the same page at this point. But yeah, a lot of villains, and I was going to say a lot of Spider-Man villains, but it's just villains in general. they go back and forth between good and bad and whatever. And I guess if anybody was going to do it of the villains, it would make sense that he would be the one or one of them to do so. Steve says, isn't Thanos still technically around in all of those other universes? And yeah, technically everybody's around in every universe all the time. We recently saw Thanos in that What If episode, like a good version of. But yeah, I think for the moment, at least, they're done with Thanos. The whole thing has kind of run its course. For me, it feels that way as well. And if they bring him back again as like an additional threat, that's not as interesting as going with a new villain and a new scenario. That's not to say we won't see him again, because I'd say we almost certainly will. But yeah, everybody exists everywhere all the time. And that's where it's at. Hey Loser says, if Bruce Campbell isn't Mysterio, I'm going to riot. So this actually speaks to the theory that then became a near reality that Bruce Campbell's roles in the Spider-Man trilogy, the original one, those three people are actually the same person who end up being Mysterio, because in the fourth Spider-Man movie that they did not make, which they still absolutely should make, it was going to be revealed that he was Quentin Beck, and that movie was going to open with Spider-Man having arrested him and dropping him off at the police station. Helmet flips off and it is Bruce Campbell. So there you go. I like to think that was the idea all along, to make him Mysterio. It's probably more likely that that's not the case, that was maybe fan service or just something they thought of, just along the way. But yeah, look, I think it would be cool if Mysterio does show up and it is Bruce Campbell. Why not? And the idea behind that version of Mysterio also, he's not like the high-tech version that you see in Far From Home. He's more kind of like the smoke and mirrors one from, say, the animated series or the comic books, the early comic books at the very least. He kind of gets more formidable as the years progress. Spencer Wright says, Emma Stone shows up as Spider-Gwen variant? Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I mean, I think that was one of, missed opportunities, but having Emma Stone take on that role in the Amazing Spider-Man universe would have been pretty cool. And I'd imagine if they got, 3-4 movies in, they probably would have ended up working that in. They would have been smart to, seeing as how popular that character is. I think it's one of those situations where, yeah, they will get to Spider-Gwen eventually. I just don't know who necessarily they're going to cast. you know, at that point, maybe Emma Stone isn't interested. Maybe they want to go with somebody else for the role. But look, yeah, seeing as she shows up in the Spider-Verse movie and Sony are doing a Black Cat movie and a Morbius movie and everything else going on, then yeah, in the next 5-10 years, yeah, we'll be seeing Spider-Gwen almost certainly. Unless Sony botch it again. Who knows? Null reference exception says, what about the vampire guy? Any chance he'll be in it? Yeah, so speaking of Morbius, the living vampire guy, I'm not interested in this movie at all. It's probably the comic book movie that I care the least about. I'm also not a massive fan of Jared Leto, and I mean, maybe it'll be great. I would love it to be great because, you know, you want movies to be good. But no, I don't know if he's actually going to show up in this. There's been no word of it. And since that movie is coming out after this, maybe that would negate putting him in it. I don't know. It doesn't need him, quite frankly, and I don't really want to see him anyway. Maybe others do. Let me know if you do. Chris says, I'm wondering why Doctor Strange is still wearing the Eye of Agamotto if the Time Stone was destroyed by Thanos. I think it's just a necklace at this point, you know? It's just a thing that he always seems to wear. Maybe he's got a different magical thing in there. Yeah, but I wouldn't worry about it too much if I'm honest. A blank username here says, I think it's not Lizard or Venom. I think it's Abomination from Shang-Chi. That would make sense. That would make a lot of sense. But, you know, if they're leaning into all the different Spider-Man villains, to me, it would make more sense for it to be the Lizard. But sure, why not? Bart says, but the one thing everybody wants to know is Bonesaw coming back. Oh man, that would have been ideal, having Bonesaw return. But unfortunately, Bonesaw was played by Randy Savage, who passed away in 2011. I mean, it's not to say they couldn't, you know, bring him back if they really wanted to. There is the technology to make that happen, or you could recast, but no Bonesaw, unfortunately. Jordan says, what the fuck is Shang-Chi? Sure, I can answer this. It's the way you pronounce it. I, for years, thought it was Shang-Chi, but apparently that's how you pronounce it. So that's why I'm pronouncing it that way. I mispronounce a bunch of things, but that is apparently correct. Now, I bet you thought I'd forgotten about my NordVPN ad spot. I never forget about NordVPN in or outside of an ad spot because I'm all about secure internet. With NordVPN, all your internet data stays safe behind a wall of next generation encryption, along with a strict no logs policy, which means they don't track, collect, or share any of your private data. It's none of their business. That's what they say. But perhaps I haven't sold you yet. Perhaps you're thinking, okay, why bother with any of this? Well, first of all, how dare you, quite frankly? And second of all, NordVPN has 5,400 plus servers in 59 countries, which means you can enjoy the internet with no limits or borders. You are able to check and dabble around in all the streaming services that you already have, but seeing as you're able to jump around countries, it means you can watch literally everything available on your Netflix, on your Amazon Prime, on your Disney Plus, to name a few. Plus, peer-to-peer sharing is welcome here. You can share large files with no hassle, thanks to hundreds of secure peer-to-peer or P2P servers. Plus, if you get one account, that lets you connect up to 6 devices, and with one click, it's all up and running. So I advise you, why don't you take control of your internet experience today with NordVPN? And right now, you can get a 2-year plan at a huge discount, plus an additional 4 months for free when you go to nordvpn.com/Mr. Sunday Movies. It's also completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/Mr. Sunday Movies, or you can click the link in the description that will be below. Let's get on with it. Quaker Oat says, what are the chances of a Bully Maguire reference? Oh, that would be incredible. I would love that. You know, every now and then, you know, they'll throw like a little meme reference our way. Every now and then, you know what I mean? I wouldn't bank on it, but at the same time, let's bank on it. Let's hope so. Fingers crossed. This is from Matthew, who says, hi, James. Just wondering, do you think maybe Peter Parker is actually Spider-Man? Matthew, you're actually editing this video. That's something that you should really be across. If you've got this far in the video, like editing-wise, you've listened to the audio, you've collected all of the clips, you really should have figured this out at this point. It's kind of disappointing. Get on with the edit. Why have we even included this? This is just breaking the flow of the video in general. We're wasting everybody's time. Let's move it along. Matt Sugg says, the one thing no one's talking about, why is the sanctum covered in ice? Did I miss something? Maybe you did. I mean, they did bust a hole in the roof of the sanctum. in Infinity War, but presumably that would have been fixed at this point. I think he's just performing some magic or whatever, and, you know, some spells going on, and maybe it got a little bit out of hand. Maybe it speaks to the fact that he's actually Mephisto. Who knows? Steven says, we have an 18-minute video about this and nothing about whether Michelle Yeoh's character in Shang-Chi is the same as her character in Guardians 2. I mean, those are mostly unrelated properties, but I can answer this here if you want. I would say they're definitely different characters. Sometimes people play different roles in the same universe. Happens a couple of times. Don't even worry about it, mate. The dude who's playing Blade was in Luke Cage or whatever. There's a few other examples, but yeah, I wouldn't stress too much about it. Or stress about it all day, all night. If you want, that's fine. Well, this is an interesting one from Jess. For the next video, one theory I saw circulating around is that after Peter erases the memories of everybody, including Ned and Mary Jane. Sorry, my dog's just barking in the background. She's got this like local beef with a possum. Don't worry about it. Something happens where Spider-Man somehow does something to make Ned hate him and eventually becomes some sort of hobgoblin. This would work because Ned would have a real resentment towards Spider-Man without knowing it's Peter. Potentially, yes. So that character does become the hobgoblin in the comics. So sure, maybe hobgobbling it up at some point. Raste Beach says, Peter should have just visited Charles Xavier for help instead. Yeah, I mean, I guess he'd have the power to do that maybe on a global scale with Cerebro, but also, like, I don't think they want to start introducing major X-Men characters in a Sony-owned property, I guess. I think they probably want to keep that separate. Also, Doctor Strange is as good as any. He can do it also, apparently. Or not do it. I don't know what's going on. Oh, this is a good one to end on. Rory Lennon says, this movie is looking very crowded. And yeah, I see the complaint of that. I completely understand that. One of the major problems with a bunch of superhero movies is that they end up packing in too many villains and none of them get enough screen time and they don't do it right and the movie just ends up being a big pile of crap, you know? And I think that's a problem that they've mostly ironed out at this point, especially in the MCU. I mean, if you look at Endgame, for example, there's certainly a lot of villains during that as they're jumping around through time and even at the end battle or whatever. But I think also the fact that most of these villains, if not all, have been already introduced kind of negate that problem. So you don't have to set up Doc Ock. You know, we already know that backstory along with Green Goblin, along with everybody else, you know what I mean? There's a lot of prior knowledge that it's assumed that you will have going in. And if not, they also do a pretty decent job of being like, here, quickly catch up. This is what's going on, you know, in the universe. I mean, Endgame on its own would make absolutely no sense if you haven't really seen the rest of those movies. But at the same time, a bunch of people must have seen that movie who hadn't seen the previous ones, if it's the biggest movie of all time. So, you know, that's how it goes. They managed to balance those things pretty well. All right, anyways, thanks for watching this. Really appreciate it. If you do have any more comments, questions, theories, leave them below. People can have a good old chat about that in the comments. Be civil if you could, you know what I mean? I mean, this is YouTube. It's an absolute shit show, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, it kind of does have to be, but it doesn't have to be. Also, I have a podcast called The Weekly Planet where we talk movies and comics and TV shows. We're going to be talking more about this on Monday's episode. It actually goes up a day early on Sunday at bigsandwich.co along with bonus podcasts, movie commentaries. Caravan of Garbage goes out there early. We're doing the Matrix films at the moment, which has been really interesting to revisit. So if you do want to check that out, that would be great. And I'll see you guys on the next video, whatever that ends up being, or podcast. You know what I mean? Thanks very much. Catch you later.